28mm RPG. Slick Rick from Cash Crick here with my friends Abe from Talking About Games, Crispy from Table Runner, and Tyler, who is also known as Flame Zombie. And we are here talking about when is it time to give up on a role player at your table, a non-role player at your table. I'd like to first off talk about just to kind of get out of the way some of our the words that we use. We're right now we're us four are the 4-dimensional beings talking about 3-dimensional role play to the 2D and the 1D players. And when we say 1D player, a 1D player is a guy that sits back in his session and doesn't say anything. He just watches what's happening, listens to the game master spew his little exposition, and when it comes to his turn, he gets ready to go ahead and roll his dice, and that's it. A 2D player is a player that will actually interact. However, it's out of character, totally out of character kind of interaction. A 3D role player is in character and will only roll when prompted by the game master as he narrates. And that's to kind of clear the air of any kind of misconceptions of what we usually talk about. And a lot of the people that tune in don't understand that. So I'll just kind of put it there. So talking about this, I see Shawner is saying kill them in kindness in your session is what he says in your stream. Kill them with kindness in your stream. So funny. I've been around people in the retail, and the thing is with our retail positions, we try to train a person, and we don't give up on them, because if you give up on the person that you're training, they will never learn fully what their rules and responsibilities are. And if they don't learn, it's because you failed them. So and I come from the background of that. I believe, Crispy, you're kind of in that position too.
Yeah, very much so. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it spreads between in the martial arts, because Abraham and Tyler are heavily into the martial arts. I mean, is there a time where you give up on somebody? You're saying, martial arts ain't for you, kid.
So I just watched and posted a great podcast interview with Josh Barnett, catch wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu great. And something that he said is that if you're not failing during your training, you aren't really training. You have to fail, right? Because when you're starting out, you don't even know really what failure means. So you run into those failure, and inevitably your GM, whoever's trying to get you into role playing, whoever's getting you into martial arts, they're not going to list every single possible way you can screw it up. And so you'll screw it up somewhere, and then it'll be up to you, the GM, to go, oh, oops, sorry, I didn't mention this, but you did something wrong here, and that's not my fault. It's not your fault. And it takes a while. It can take a little bit, especially if they have prior training from a bad martial art or prior training from a bad GM or a bad system, where right now I'm working on my table, getting rid of question asking, because that's something that happens, right? It's something that happens at a lot of tables, and it's not corrected, and a lot of times it's not even understood why it's a problem. But it slowly but surely it works. Last session I had a single question asked, and we fixed it very quickly. I'll go into detail on that later, I'm sure. But yeah, it's the same in martial arts. You'll show somebody when you're doing a figure 4 wrist lock or a Kimura or Americana, if you're into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you want to do it with a monkey grip and not a C grip. But humans want to grip with their thumb. And, us that have been through the public education system, we want to ask questions. We don't want to just speak out of turn. So
right. Yeah, exactly.
You have to unlearn. You have to unteach that. And if they're willing to stick with it, great. But sometimes you get a martial arts student that's like, well, I've always done it this way and that works for me. And it's like, okay, well, try it. Try it this way and try it that way. They're like, well, I just don't see why you would try it this way. And it's like, it takes you 2 seconds. All I'm asking you is to try. And if they won't even try, that's when.
Abraham, you have any insight on that?
It's also important that people understand why you are teaching these things. For example, about the questions. There could be 3 types of people that do not understand why that's important. A non-role player, someone that has never played tabletop RPGs before. Just like I'm a non-skydiver. I do not skydive, so I'm a non-skydiver. No. Someone has never played tabletop role-playing games before. But there are other 2 cases. The other case is someone that is simply not intelligent enough. You have to accept that some people are simply 60, 70 IQ. I'm sorry. The other case is a very disingenuous individual who has seen this stuff work. But that individual is worried that nobody else will play with him because he doesn't role play. Or perhaps he has his YouTube channel. He thinks that people will no longer watch his videos. So here's the thing about asking questions. I saw this very disingenuous argument about someone that you actually know, Rick. Well, it's the same if you were to ask, what's the color of the object? Instead of saying, I look at the object to appreciate its color. It takes the same time. What's the color? I look at the color. What's the color? I look at the color. It takes you the same time, the same amount of time. I don't know how many milliseconds that was. The difference is that when you go into roleplay, I look at the object, I examine this, I look at that, you keep immersion, you keep the immersion. And when you ask the question, you break the immersion. So if it takes the same amount of time, why would you do something that breaks the immersion? It is absolutely nonsensical.
Right. What do you think there, Crispy? You got any thoughts on this?
Well, you'll have to forgive me. We've gone on a little bit of a tangent, and I may be one of those 60, 70 point IQ guys that Abraham was alluding to. We're talking about, is there a time, or what? Could you just refresh my memory? I'm sorry.
Yes. When do you think it's time to give up on someone that isn't role playing at your table?
Well, I'm like Rick, perhaps. I tend to err a little bit more on leniency, working with people. I tend to look at if I have a player, for example, and I don't really have this too much, but if I have a player that's lagging behind, I see that as more my issue than their issue. So I'm a big believer in taking ownership of things, and what I mean by that is that if I see a failure in the game, the failure isn't with the player, it's with me. The player either doesn't understand because I failed to provide an example of what I was looking for. I've failed to model what I consider to be good game behavior. So I would. That said, I do think that there is value in having some red lines. Like if there are some times, and I would love to hear what you gentlemen have to say about this. But there are some times where I think it's not so much that we're giving up on a player. It's just that there's an incompatibility, and that incompatibility is usually coupled with intransigence. So if I have a player that's doing something that I don't appreciate in the game, and I have an honest and open conversation with that player, and they just tell me to pound sand, or they, even worse, they say that they won't do the offending action, and then they just keep doing it, then I think there is a point. But perhaps there's other red lines that we could talk about, like, well, okay, At what point do we say this is not salvageable? I have a tendency to think that, just based on my limited experience with trying to be more of a role player, most players actually can do it. It's just a matter of practice or modeling. Like, look, we're gonna do we're gonna play the same game we all have fun with. We all love this game. We're just gonna change a few things here and there, and we'll see how that doesn't. And then talk about how the changes are manifest in the game. Like, so do we notice something different? And I think most people, if they're being honest, most people will say, yeah, this was different and I like it a lot. So yeah, that's my take on it. So I would, that's a long-winded answer. Rick, you can just tell me, like, Chris, shut up. Like, that's fine. You can, is there a way?
No,
that you can just mute
keep on
me?
going. Because if you
Holy
shut
smokes.
up, I'll have to talk.
Can you see how many people are watching? Is it like falling by the second? Is
Let's
it?
see. Oh, we have comments already.
We've had enough forehead for the moment, please. Can we go to someone with less forehead for a moment? Okay, that'd be nice. So at any rate, that's my take on it. Yes, but I would be very patient, because I think most people, once they understand the intention, most people can do it. I do agree that there's perhaps a baseline that would attract people to the hobby, and below that baseline, like Abraham was talking, yeah, there's probably below that baseline, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. But I recently had someone that came and audited the game, and I know, because I know this individual, I know that they are very not accurate. Like, they barely passed high school. They barely like eked through, and it wasn't because they didn't try. It wasn't because they weren't being challenged. It's just, it was a real hard thing. And I knew some of the coaches of this individual that coached them in football, and it was another thing where they just didn't have the ability cognitively to keep different plays in their head. And yet at the game table, he was absolutely fine. Now, I'm not sure if he could, I'm not sure he's not a member of Mensa, okay, but he's to say the least. But when it came to role playing, he could be he was on par with everyone else. No problem at all. All that he needed was someone to explain to him, here's what we're doing, this is what it looks like, and this is why you'll enjoy it, or this is why you may enjoy it. So here's a motivation for you. And it worked great. So yeah, anyway, that's enough for me. Forehead, no more for you. Okay. I'm actually going to mute myself just so that I'm not tempted to there.
No, I mean, it was all, I think we were all silent because it was all agreeable. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it just goes to show, you don't need to be a genius to be able to role play. You just kind of need to understand what it is, and not have an ego about it. Because you asked, are there similar things in martial arts? And I think there are with people who have egos, right? They go, I'll teach a technique, and from the historical martial arts perspective specifically, I'm teaching from this book right behind me, Meyer's 1571 treatise on sword fighting, wrestling, and all of that good stuff. And we're teaching historical martial arts, right? So historical martial arts is different from, general martial arts.
Hysterical martial arts.
Yeah. It's different from, modern martial arts in the same way that, role playing is different from wargaming. They have similar elements, but, so I go, okay, Meyer doesn't like thrusting a lot because he says they're too dangerous to both you and your opponent, and he's in a dueling scenario where he's not trying to kill the other guy. So I explain that, and my good students will go, makes sense to me because I understand the context, right? I understand that if I was in an actual fight for my life, I might use more thrusts.
Let me interrupt real quick about the thrusting thing. Very different from feudal Japan. In feudal Japan, in non-lethal duels, they actually thrusted a lot. Like, for example, this battle between, it was Yuve Yagyu versus this other guy, the guy that you never remember because he was the loser, of course. But they were fighting, and Juve kept on winning the duels, and he got really angry, the loser. He was like, we are at the same level. Why are you saying that you are winning? Why are those people saying that you won the duel? And he was like, no, every single time I won against you, just take a look at the distance of the tip of my katana was touching you. And the other guy, no, let's fight for real. Japan, let's fight for real. They fought. Of course, Juve killed the guy. And he said, victory is measured by inches. Well, there was another Japanese measurement. It was the shaku, I don't remember the measurement, but he said that. So as long as you are a master of your art, it is possible to stab, but very different from in the context of Tyler that they consider it too little.
But, when you have a poor student won't understand the context and they'll go, oh, well, that seems dogmatic. That seems like, this guy didn't know what he was talking about. He was just teaching his own special style and, he didn't want people to thrust against him. And it's like, well, wait, hold on. Because you're brand new here. You haven't even tried his style. So how do you know what, will and won't work if you're not willing to try it, right? And in my experience, those students of martial arts, they leave before you have to kick them out because they realize it's not for them. Just like in tabletops, usually if you find a player that's just sitting there silent all the time and they don't do anything, eventually they'll get bored and they'll leave. They just won't show up again. So sometimes that's not the case, but I find that's like most of the time.
Yeah. I'm for me, when I'm running a game, for my group that I have online here, it's I'm not like, I know, Abraham, you want me to be more strict in everything and enforce. I had been kind of taught due to retail that we do that behind the scenes kind of idea. So that's something that I go over, like at the end of the session. We have our little bit of a talk and everything about how the session went and everything.
Just a real quick question. Why don't you do it mid-session?
Yeah, that's a thing that I'm going to very likely be doing in my next session.
Oh, that's a good idea. So, I think I might borrow that rather than wait for the end, maybe just having a quick break. How are things going? But I wonder, Abraham, if that would run the risk of losing some momentum. Like if things are going well, then
yes, but do it in roleplay. Roleplay solves everything. Like I did with Kevin. Perfect example. Kevin started, I will. You missed your turn as you were thinking of the future.
Yeah, I've noticed you doing that.
And he's like, got it.
The way I handle it is, if you want to do a break like that, just like have that part of your schedule is like and you can think of it as we have 2 1-hour sessions and a 15-minute break in between them. And, that way you can do, at the end of your first hour session, you can go, all right, out of break character, comments, concerns, go get food, go to the bathroom, whatever. Do you guys have, is there something that's not working here? You make your quick adjustments. It also gives you time to make some notes and do some really quick prep if your players are wandering somewhere you don't know. And then bam, you start a new session.
I can hear what you're saying. I do think though, if I'm only playing for 3 hours, I'd rather go hard, like for 2.5 hours and just go. And then keep it at the end. Just because myself, I wouldn't want to, we usually have a bit of a, like, I've seen Abraham, you do this before the session actually starts. Oh, I'm going to peel back the curtain here. So here's like behind the scenes talking about games. He doesn't want you to know this. I'm going to tell you anyway. You can get all the secrets here. He actually, before the game starts, he'll say, well, okay, any out of character questions, like, you have any questions, you're going to do this, you can have all that. So he's setting the expectation already before the setting ends. And then he clearly said, and I haven't gone quite as far as Abraham has in my own games, but he says, okay, we're going to begin now. And now we begin. And it's a clear delineation, and then it's on and we're off to the races. But anyway, Rick was saying something interesting, and then I interrupted, and Abraham interrupted first. So we're gonna blame him.
No,
I jumped on it, and Tyler just piles onto everything. So It's a Pathfinder thing. I know.
Oh,
I get
good.
it. I know
I'll just go do my own thing over here.
Yeah, that's right. Poor Rick. Jeez.
Yeah.
You could just, you may have a little bit of more wisdom, we'll say, on the rest of us. You can just tell us young
Well, let's
whippersnappers.
think it's
Wisdom.
Shut up, kids.
He thinks it's his channel or
Young
something.
people,
Yeah, it's
anyways.
almost like you think you're hosting this or something. Come on.
So that's the thing is I look at my sessions that I do online as kind of like a teaching, learning. I'm learning things. It's my motto when I use it at the end of any of my streams. If you listen, I'm just saying I'm learning things. You're learning things. We all learn together, and it's the experience of learning this stuff is part of the fun of understanding the role playing, how to role play. And when it comes down to players, my players start like when you see my first early game sessions, we were using the tabletop, with the tokens and everything, and you see how arduous and long every turn took, and then there were long pauses where I would have to go ahead and start untargeting things and retargeting things on the virtual table, and it's just a time soak, right? And then when you see when we started to kind of go, okay, let's do theater of the mind, and then suddenly we ended up cutting back a lot of that time wasting and it becoming rather efficient. Now, when Abraham started posting his games, like it was Abraham's game with Crispy, and we were like, "Oh, that's how you do it." And it was a good example of how to actually do it. In the meanwhile, we were just going, "Okay, I think I understand what he's talking about. I think we know how he's doing it." But until we actually saw it in firsthand, it was like, this is how you do it. This is how the master does it. And
I just wanted to add a detail just to give like context. I actually consider myself the most, this is going to sound like a meme, but the most experienced player in roleplay. But because I first started at 14 years old and I didn't know crap. I didn't know what roleplay was all about. And it was only 3 years later that I saw that Game Master in Texas. And when I hit 17 years old, I started to clumsily, little by little, getting into roleplay and nonstop, all the time, roleplaying.
Yeah.
And I never had like a huge hiatus. So I had all of that experience. So don't think like, oh, he's like the mega ultimate super genius. No, it's just experience, committing errors over and over again. And that's why, for example, when this player, Sam, from in Shoner's channel, he told this horrible story of the Mongolian midget. You all know the Mongolian. In the JTRP, okay. That guy bamboozled him pretty horribly. He gave him the worst descriptions ever. So the poor guy, the poor Sam, he kind of thought he understood what roleplay was, but he didn't know how to obtain details through roleplay. So he got completely destroyed. And of course, nobody was answering. No one, not a single one. I waited I waited like 8-10 hours. I said, someone is going to tell him how to obtain details through roleplay. Nobody gave him details. And I said, Sam, I look at the battlefield to see the distance between this and that. I look at the object to see blah, blah, blah. But then that's when I started to go really hard on the roleplay tips and the actual plays. I thought people really need an example.
Yeah. Exactly. And I highly appreciate your posting of your game sessions, because a lot of people don't realize, a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't watch the role-playing sessions." And that's the case with Mr. Max. I was like, "Hey, do you watch our stuff?" He's like, No, I try not to watch the games. I find them kind of boring to kind of watch. However, watching your guys' sessions, it was eye-opening, very informational, like, to break it down into its structure of how easy and simple it is. For the players, I find as a player, it's easy to role play. All you have to do is pretend you are the character, and you say, "I am doing this. I am doing that." This this is what I'm
Well,
doing.
it depends. I am doing, if you're already doing it. If you're going to do something, I do this, I do that. Sometimes it could get a bit confusing, but yes.
Yes, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And a lot of them are presumptive, like your casting of this. Sometimes there needs to be a roll to your concentration roll or whatever. So that must be done in order for that to actually become an entire action. There's little nuances and stuff like that. It depends on the system, of course, but it is rather easier for players, I find, to become role players, where the game master part is a little bit more trickier because you have to stay in narrator form. And that, with my last session, I had discovered it was very easy to get knocked out of that narrator form, which you've seen, Abraham.
That
You
start
noticed
was
it right
amazing,
away.
Rick. The start of your session was beautiful. It's beautiful. And I was like, wow. And I thought, no, you can still salvage this. And so you kind of see, like, like,
Yeah,
But
and then it was
but-
just like,
But the first part was beautiful. Yeah.
So from now on, I'm gonna be game mastering with a bunch of notes around. Stay in narrator form all over the place here on all my panels. And but that's the thing is I'm trying not to give up on myself. I'm trying to better myself, and that expertise feedback that you give me is really good. And a lot of people may and this is the thing, a lot of people may think you're ragging on me about the gameplay and stuff. He is not. He is helping me 100%. I just wanted to state that on my comment on that when I commented back on your video response on it.
More context. More context. I also think it's because of my way of teaching martial arts. It is very different from Tyler. I can already see that Tyler is very careful with his people. That careful. No, if it hits you, I'm sorry. This full contact, real life on the street. I'm sorry, full speed, full violence. But of course, we still have control. So I go like that in roleplay. I go exactly like that.
Yeah.
If I was teaching people to defend themselves, I would definitely teach it that way. But
you don't teach
since
them to defend.
well,
you
I'm
must
teaching
always teach them to defend themselves.
yes, but I mean, if that was the context, right, because it's the context, right? Because I'm teaching
Sports.
teaching yes, it's a sport, but it's also it's a historical sport. They were doing it not to kill each other back then. They even mentioned why are we fighting with long swords when they haven't been used on the battlefield in 100 years? Fun. they're doing it for fun, and but yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes with ego, right? And you don't have, everyone has an ego, right? And if you don't have one, somebody will give it to you. But yeah, like Rick, you don't have when you're corrected, you take great. I have something to improve on now. And I take the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I haven't been teaching martial arts for a very long time. So if I see a new way of teaching something, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll try implementing that. Or, I'm young. I don't know everything there is to know about fighting. I just happen to know more than everyone in my area. So, when people come in with more knowledge than I do, we occasionally have people from the older HEMO schools in Oklahoma come by and they go, hey, you're doing this wrong. You're holding your hands too low. I don't think it is. Well, that's always worked for me because, yeah, it's worked for me against crap, against students that don't know any better. So anything's going to work for me in that situation, right? So, no, I just take it as, I can be even better here. And then I can pass that knowledge on to my students and hopefully they take that knowledge. So, I think in anything, if you're trying to improve whatever your hobby is, or, non-hobbies, just if you're trying to improve a real skill, you have to look at what somebody else is saying, go, okay, I'm going to try that. And then if you try it and it's just, no matter how you're trying it, it's just not working for you, maybe then discard their advice or, pick their brain and go, what did you mean by this? Because I tried that and it's not working for me. But, yeah, just try it. It's free to try.
I think that should be kind of the philosophy behind our RPG crusade as well is to show examples of failure as well too, and give insight on how to improve your sessions, make them faster, make them run smoother and more immersive that way. Because I mean, we are having our own version of fun. It's more like we're experiencing something. But when somebody like starts giggling and laughing kind of off on the side, it does pull you out. And I can as a game master, when I'm trying to carry more of a serious tone with the game, that this is life and death for your characters, and somebody's giggling, laughing, and playing a character that's just playing games with the other character, it does not fit at all. So you have to kind of at the end of the session step back and say, look, that isn't right. But I know, as Abraham would do, he would correct it right away. And that's
it also
something
depends. It also depends on the type of game, because in comedy games, sometimes things so funny happen, and it's very difficult. The players simply, they cannot help it. They explode in laughter.
Yeah.
In other cases, if it's a dark game, like you said, and someone starts to laugh in character, we immediately start to interpret that as if that character is a bit insane. Like they see a cadaver and, and you're like, this is really dark because he's off his rocker. Yeah, he's insane.
Yeah, that could be implemented in the game session itself as what is actually happening.
If it's only an occasional thing too, like there, you talk about gallows humor. If you look at like interviews with like World War I veterans, those guys they're putting cigars in like dead dudes' mouths and laughing about it, and it's like that. That's a coping mechanism for so that could be. You could try to incorporate that as part of the character, and you could also try pushing on them. If they're playing something up as funny all the time, then like maybe you start pushing like more bad things happening, maybe even specifically to that character, and then just see what happens. Are they still trying to laugh it off? Are they missing an arm and they're making Monty Python jokes instead of addressing the fact that their arm just got chopped off? Then it's still a problem.
So we have a little bit of chat in the comments here. Shauner says, of course, let's go ahead and show that. Something funny actually does happen.
I think there's a distinction here that, I mean, maybe it's a finer point, but if we're playing, it's still a game. We're all doing it for enjoyment. Call it what you will, fun, whatever, engagement. Oftentimes, even in serious moments, there'll be little glimpses of levity. Like there'll be something that is just hysterical. Something will happen. We'll all laugh. I'm not so worried about that. I don't think I even Abraham. I know Abraham is, of all of us, he's probably the closest to pure on this topic. But I have seen Abraham laughing in serious things. I mean, he's not doing it into the microphone, but I can tell he's doing it, and it's not part of the. So he's there. He's having fun. So I don't think any of us are really saying no. I see a smile at the table. Stop that. Knock it off. Like, why are you smiling? This is supposed to be serious. Like no, of course not. Of course not. What I take issue with, and I think there was a comment here. Set the expectations before the session. That's true. Like, so look, if we're going to, like, if we're playing something that's going to be a little more of a grim dark or something like that, then I don't want you to be like talking about you're going to go to the next merchant and buy clown shoes, or you want to buy oversized prosthetic breasts that you're going to wear, or something like that. Like, it's not, that doesn't fit in the setting. But if you do something funny, or if just naturally things that happen that are funny, we're all going to laugh at the table. I mean, it's part of this is just being able to read the table, whether your table is online or in person. You have to kind of see. And there's some, I'm sure people that I'm sure you've all had players like this, where it was really it was a heavy topic or just something, or people were a character just died, and it's all, everyone's kind of feeling a little morose about it. And you know what? Someone cracks a joke and it's perfect. It's exactly like Tyler was saying, a little bit of gallows humor.
A question, in character, right?
Yeah, in character.
Yeah, of course.
And especially if it's in character, I actually find that if for those that think that goofing off is the best way, if your humor is nested within the game, if it's actually an in character humor, it's so much funnier. It's so much funnier.
We at my, just to interrupt you, at my table the other day, the party, this is a game I was running. The party was going into an orcish stronghold, and there's a giant sinkhole in the city, and there was about 5 minutes straight of in character, really dry, not double entendre jokes about the rusty orc hole in the town, and that we were trying to keep it flat for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then it was just like, oh my, because they're all playing like below average charisma. That I think there's one of them that's above average. So it's just a bunch of morons wandering around this town, like saying obscene things without intending to, and it's just like, oh my god, we've got the Three Stooges adventuring here, but that was the intention, right? That was
exactly.
So like
I prefer, like, I absolutely prefer that, like that. If rather than just someone trying to be, oh, that's so random, that kind of. I'm just not. If I may, could I share a brief game story that I still find just hysterical? We were playing in a modern setting. Okay, because picture this is a modern setting. It's kind of a emergent magic. Not everyone knows about magic. It's very, very much on the fringe. All the normies out there, they don't know that magic exists. But the players, their characters, they have special abilities now. Well, the player characters are trying to escape. They're in a car. They're being chased by 2 agency men in a Crown Victoria, squealing around the streets after them. And our caster character did something completely unexpected, and it turned out to be just hysterical. He says he describes that he points at the driver of the car that's giving chase, and he casts invisibility on the driver. So I describe the passenger of the car screaming and scrambling to try to grab the now vacant driver's seat, trying to get into the driver's seat to grab the steering wheel, because what's going on, there's suddenly no driver, right? So there's and describing the driver who doesn't realize that he's invisible. All of a sudden his partner is trying to climb into his seat. What are you doing? Get off me, and of course it just was hysterical. Afterwards we all laughed at how funny that would be, but it was entirely in the game. It was a different, totally, like I've never before then, in all of my years of gaming, I've never seen someone use casting invisibility on an opponent to actually, like, it was just an ingenious thing. I loved it. It sticks in my mind as something that was hysterical. Everyone in the game, like, was just laughing. We were laughing during when it was happening. We had laughed about it afterwards, but it wasn't really an out of character thing, which unfortunately, if it's just constant reference to, somebody has they have a quote from a 1980s or 1990s pop culture thing, or they're going to quote some, even worse, it's going to be some current events thing, like whatever. Then while you can get a cheap laugh from that, I feel like that is, I would actually talk to the player afterwards and say, like, I get it, and you're a funny guy, you're way funnier than I am, but I find it distracting that you keep want to refer to the Kardashians, and we're playing, like, please, like, it's just not, it's immersion breaking when you do that. So that's a case where if the player just consistently did that, I think I'd have to talk to the player and say, look.
Yeah. And if you're, running multiple games, it might be a thing where you go, hey, I've got a modern game that, you could make those jokes in character and they would make sense. Would you rather be playing that? Yeah. Because it seems if all of your players' interests are in these modern references, but they're playing in your, like, late Renaissance, fantasy setting, then it's kind of like, okay, you don't seem that interested in the setting. Why are you here?
And you really, it really depends on the sort of character that you are role playing as. Because, for example, in the case of Crispy, he was in the first session of the Dark and Terrible campaign. He was saying these funny things, but it was within his character. He was like this kind of like dandy sort of charming swordsman sort of character. So he's used to using his charm with his words. And after the session, he was like, "Oh no, I think I messed up the theme, the mood, because it's supposed to be scary." But now that's the sort of character you see this in grim, dark situations. There are those characters that perhaps use humor to deal with the horrible things that are happening. Yeah,
dark humor kind of aspect to it in a sense.
But it maybe what we're getting at here is we want the players to be as committed to the game as we are. And I'm always going to be putting more time into the game than a player is. So I still, it pains me when players show up and they haven't given it any thought. They're going to be passive. Like, well, that wouldn't work if we were all that way. Like and I see a lot of game masters, they spend a lot of time on this. Like game masters in chat too. I'm sure all of these gentlemen spend untold hours getting ready for games. So it's really disrespectful to have players show up and then just they don't care. They just whatever. They're lackadaisical about it, and I don't like that.
For me, with the sessions that I've been playing with Spencer and Josh, Gordo, it has been like a learning and gradually improving kind of sessions. They've started off as the Mother May I kind of players, asking all the out of character questions. We finally got them to mostly stop the out of character questions and adapted quite well in most aspects. Sometimes they'll have a mistake or two, which it's fine. I don't come down on him like Abe does, but
no, he's a purist. Yeah, and we love him for it.
I heard that.
It's not a dig. I know we're not trying to get after you. There's different styles. Like,
I just live for 1 second.
Yeah.
But we don't want to scare everybody in our chat and everything, saying you must. And some of us are a little bit more lenient, of course, but the goal I want my players to get to is what Abraham has in his sessions.
I also think that it's important to know that your players understand this. Do not be afraid of your players. They are not going to bite your head off if you tell them you missed your turn. Your character is talking to no one in particular, like a crazy person. They are not going to do anything to you if you say those things.
Yeah, and I think part of it is, are you playing with randos or are you playing with personal friends? This is
always better to play with friends. Yeah, Tyler's 100% right. Yeah,
exactly. Because if you're playing with friends,
you can see a perfect example when I played with Mr. The randomest of rando people you can imagine. You're going to roleplay, you fucking bastard.
Abraham. And I can understand that totally, Abraham, because these are not people that we have any connection with. If it's just, but if you have already a connection with the person, then it's just going to go better. There's already a relationship there. If you don't have a relationship at all, and it's just going to be someone that comes into a game. Like I was asked to run a game at the local game store. Horrible experience, just absolutely horrible. Because I didn't pick the players. The owner of the store came to me. Hey, we've got a group that's dissolving because they don't have a DM, and would you come in and be their DM just for a few weeks till their DM comes back? Oh, sure, yeah. Because I had always had on my bucket list that I wanted to run a convention game. Like, I don't know why. I was like, it'd be so cool to be in a group with a bunch of other people that don't wear enough deodorant, and we'll all be together and it'll be fun, and we all enjoy, like, you'll see all these games happening, and you can look around and you see someone else and they're gesticulating madly about something else going on, and I'll be like, I really want to do that. It's like on my bucket list. And one of my players had been to many conventions, and he's like, you would hate it. You would absolutely hate it. You have just random people sign up for the game. You have no idea who they are. They're going to come with all of their baggage. Some of them need severe counsel. Like, they should probably be in an institution. They shouldn't be there. and you're thinking that you're going to run this fun game, and it's not that. It's not that at all. It's just not a. It's not a thing. You're better to be with friends. It's so much better to be with friends. Oh boy.
I actually did yeah. I actually did playtesting for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and as cool as it is to look at what the finished product is and what it was when I playtested it, I mean, yeah, you're sat there with a bunch of random people. The DM's a developer of the game, so that's cool. You figure they know something at least about what they're doing because it's the game designer. But
you would think so, but from what I've seen online, some of these actual plays from the people that like design their game, you're like, what?
Yeah,
but I guess there's a big difference between the person that can play at a professional level to the person that just coaches. Like there's the best coaches aren't necessarily the best players.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali was a terrible coach.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Tyler. Finish what you were saying.
Yeah, sorry, Tyler.
I was just
it's
gonna
my
say,
forehead.
Yeah,
it has to get its word in.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it. I imagine it's sort of the same as running for a convention because you're thrown in with a bunch of randos, like you say, but even more so there in the playtest, you're focusing so much on the mechanics that because that's they're not trying to fix your role play at the table at a micro level. They're trying to fix the macro game mechanic sort of side of things.
Right.
So you're not really thinking about role play. You're sitting there going, did it feel like I did enough damage last round? I don't know.
Well, I kind of feel that the fact that there seems to be so many games out there where the person running the game is just supposed to have an open door for everybody. And I'm going to sound like a terrible gatekeeper here, but think of it this way. There's a lot of talk right now about these safety tools, of something that I just can't ever envision having that in my table. Ever. I feel like that's something that would be required if you didn't know the people that were there. Like if these are just completely random people. And to me, it just seems like it's like a solution searching for a problem. What's the problem? If you know your players, then you're already going to know, well, that, I know that guy. He had his son die suddenly, tragically. I'm going to be sensitive to that because he's my friend. But this other idea that you're going to have some safety tool that you're going to, because you don't know the person, like you have nothing at all that you have in
you're
common.
Offending me right now. This is my X card. Stop
it just seems so. It's like when I first read that, I'm like, was this really a thing? I couldn't believe it. I'm like, are people that fragile that they have to have and you don't have any idea who it is that's at your game table? You don't even know the basics.
And even if you're with a rando, you didn't even do a session 0 to be like, hey, what topics are no-goes?
Yeah, or to me, just ask them, what kind of adventure do you want to do? Well, we want to do an adventure where we like paint by numbers and then we maybe get a little bit of gold and Okay, so I already know this is like the My Little Pony brony thing.
Orcus beheadings are probably off the table at that,
So it's not, I'm not going to be dropping, some space marine in some dark, like it's not going to be the same. But I think that has to do with the fact that if you want to have a really good experience at the game table, you should probably know who your players are, and you should probably be a little discerning about who you game with. Like,
if I would,
go ahead, Rick.
If I was going to post a note at my local game store, I would probably have something of a disclosure of the what kind of a game that I'm trying to put together here, and give the idea of what kind of rules that should be followed, as far as player etiquette and that sort of thing goes. But it is, if you were just showing up and engaging with a group of random people, it's more of you're more concerned about the stress of the whole thing. Is this going to go smoothly? All that kind of stuff. So you're not necessarily, thinking in the context of, are these guys good role players or are they terrible role players? You're just trying to make the game run smoothly so that everybody can have a good time at the table, at the local game store, as a random kind of thing. And I find, that kind of pressure can also affect you if you're running a game live on stream. It's all out there for everybody to see. I'm thinking in the for my next game session, we're going to do what Abraham does is we pre-record it, and that way that kind of stress is kind of alleviated off the people for a little bit, and you're not kind of on the spot. You know that if there is some sort of mishap or something goes down, you can edit that out fairly easily.
Well, and
And
Rick,
uh-huh.
sorry, go ahead, Imran.
Okay, and also your channel is not that big, Rick, so there's not
No.
too much sense in having it live. It's not like you're going to have like 20 people like, oh, look, like going to watch a movie or whatever. So yeah, pre-recorded. Now I wanted to say something else about the safety tools and all of that.
Yes,
Most of
cool.
it and the fake role players. Most of it is the fault of the business side. It's because these business people, they want to sell tabletop role-playing games, no matter who purchased that. If you are a board gamer, if you are someone having a conversation, if you are a Mother May I player, if you're an actor, they just care about selling their games. They are not going to tell you, no, that's not how you roleplay. They're going to tell you, oh, sure, you're doing it great.
Yeah,
Please buy all of the supplements.
Yeah, I think that there's an effort, like Abraham said, there's an effort to commoditize the role of the game master. So in other words, the game master doesn't have to be skilled because he just does the game. They take a lot of the decision making away from the game master in some of these games. They take it away from the game master, and so that's this idea that no, you know, pretty quick you're not even. It doesn't matter who the game master is because you have these X cards, or you have this, or you have that. Mm-hmm. So anybody can do that, but that's not true. I don't think anyone can do it in terms of running the game. Not initially. Eventually, perhaps.
Yeah, you're totally right, and you can like actively see this with like Wizards of the Coast doing there's not enough people who are game masters, and why is that? Oh, well, they're looking at it from the perspective of, and they say this in their meetings, players don't buy stuff. We need to make more people GMs because GMs are the ones that are buying stuff.
They're the whales.
And it's like that's not the way you should be looking at that. You should be looking at, well, why does no one want to be a GM? Maybe no one wants to be a GM because they're tired of having to tiptoe around, who knows what is going to end up at their table. And you mentioned gatekeeping earlier, but for me, who runs in-person games, but even if you run online games, I'm inviting you to my house. I'm going to gatekeep that.
Same.
I don't care if you call me a gatekeeper. Yeah, only certain people are allowed access to my home.
Yeah, if you're a weirdo, you're not coming in my house. Well, you can come in once, and that's it.
It's like misinformation or disinformation about gates. We're really not creating gates for anyone. We are just inviting people that we enjoy spending time with at our table. If you want to play tabletop RPGs, standing on your hands, doing a handstand and rolling with your feet, you can do that at your table. You can do it. There's no gate stopping you from that. We're just saying we like to play with role players. That's it.
Yeah, Rick, you made I thought a really good comment that I thought was worth maybe us spending a little bit of time on. It's those of us that have posted games online. Like myself personally, I don't run games as entertainment for a YouTube audience.
Right.
There are some that can do that, and they're good at it, and they do it as a media production. But I don't run games as a media production. The fact that I post the games isn't because first of all, most actual plays, let's be honest, it's not much for entertainment. I mean, you got to watch them at double speed, if that. There's some actual plays where I'm like, okay, I wish there was a ×3 speed on this. Like I can only do ×2. And even then it seems slow. And these are my own. Like when I watch my own, it's at double speed and I'm still, holy smokes, how slow can this get? So I don't know that it's ideal entertainment. Now there's some exceptions to that. Like I thought that the last Strahd session that Abraham ran, I thought that was absolutely entertaining. The whole 2 hours. I thought that was great. It was like listening to a radio play, but I don't think that that approaching the game like this is something to be. This is a piece of media content. That's my Shadow and Sun. What? Come over and case the joint. I'm unsubscribing. No, you can't come over and case the joint. So, you can, but I guess you could, because I did say you can come over once. So the issue is that it's not. This is something that is really for the enjoyment of those that are doing it, not those that watch it after the fact. Does that make sense? Like, it's like, but because I know what you're saying, Rick, when you say, well, like you feel this pressure, like I'm going to put this online, because I feel that too. Because I my very first actual play that I put online, oh man, I was terrified. I'm still terrified when I put an actual play up, because I feel like it shows that there's this massive capacity gap between what I'm talking about and what actually happens. I'm maybe a little harder on myself than I ought to be, but it feels that way. But that's probably thinking of it the wrong way. I'm not putting it there because I want it to be, so I don't want it to be the next serial Critical Role type thing. That's not why it's there. Anyway. Again,
Tyler?
You can just mute me, Rick. Jeez,
Tyler?
come on.
Did you want to say something?
No.
Oh, I was responding. Bo Paints Mini said, how many weapons within reach now? And I was trying to hold up 4, but the background's blurring out my hand. It's doing a really good job.
Yeah, it's really impressive.
I was going to say something though. I was going to say, yeah, that's absolutely true, because I find even the good actual plays, I'll listen to them and go, ooh, that's interesting. But I'm getting there for like DM tips or role playing tips to just go like, oh, how does this person do it? Oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. But because I'm not there, I'm not the character. It's just kind of like those like pauses that happen that just disappear when you're role playing because you're in character. They don't disappear when you're in the audience.
No.
Yeah.
It's not a spectator sport, really.
Yeah.
It's for those to play. Yeah.
Just like wrestling. Wrestling,
Yeah.
I'll say it. Wrestling sucks to watch. It just looks, it's why people
Well, I don't know
UFC,
about that.
They're watching.
There's always female wrestling.
they're just
I'm
watching
just
and
kidding.
they're like,
Come on.
These two guys are just rolling around on the ground. What are they doing? And it's like, well, when you're there, you're like, I got this guy's forearm jammed into my throat. Like,
there's a lot of crotch.
I'm always
There's a lot
doing
of crotch.
watching it, going, no.
I can appreciate the athleticism without, having to actually watch it. There are other sports that absolutely are spectator sports. Like I feel like boxing's a spectator sport. It's incredibly exciting to watch boxing.
Well, the rules are made for it to be a spectator sport.
Yeah. So, but at any rate, I also feel like when we're talking about when's it okay to kick someone from a group, and I would suggest that those of us that are focused on the role play, I think our red lines, probably with minor differences, our red lines are likely the same as any group's red lines. If there's someone who's disruptive, if there's someone that's disrespectful to either the host or the other players, if there's someone that is, just over the top in one way or the other, if there's someone who's undependable, he's just never around, those kind of things are probably the same across any style of game. Like even if you're not a role player at all and you just enjoy hanging out, it's a beer and pretzels night, and you throw the funny math rocks from time to time, and you're never in character, you probably have similar criteria for who's there and who's not. Like if there's someone that's just a jerk, you're not going to have some jerk around. So it's probably not. I mean, the only added thing I would say is that I'm looking for players who want to treat the hobby as a hobby that they're willing to give time to. I want them to be committed to it. Like I'm not looking
it's about
for
not wasting other people's time.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. You put it better than I could. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Like you got to show respect to the host, show respect to your fellow players. For 3 hours, you can do this, and if you can't do this, then this isn't for you. And talk to me later. We'll play some cards. We'll do something else. We'll go to the range. We'll go golfing. We'll go for a motorcycle ride. We'll do something else together. But this isn't something that you've got the attention span for. Then I'm not going to inflict that on the rest of the group.
Like Crispy says, shut me up if I'm talking too much.
Yeah, you're talking way too. I should have the mic. Tyler, shut up. I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Tyler.
That's a great point. I think a lot of the sort of problem players you'll run into are those that have no other hobbies. They feel like they have to spend, I have to be in every one of my friends' games because it's the only hobby we share. And it's
Yeah.
like, there's
It's
other
the
stuff we can
extremes,
do.
Tyler, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's either those that have nothing else going,
Uh-huh.
nothing else at all, or those that have everything else going on that they can't give even a little bit of time to it. There has to be, it's kind of in the middle, I think.
Yeah.
Abraham, any insight there? I know you were doing the.
Well, I was thinking of various things, but I think it's important, yes, when it comes to what Crispy said, that this is not a professional production. We are not actors. We are not reading a script. Many of those amazing actual plays, they are actually following a script. You can see.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm going to let you decide as you watch them, but the major RPG publishers, and they have this amazing actual plays with actual roleplay, mind you, but it appears to be actual roleplay. But if you pay close attention, you can see the cuts between the scenes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And they are flawless in their diction. They're not going to be like stuttering or stumbling. They have perfect diction. You do not have that in a real actual play. So this is all about just role playing, as simple as that, not performing for someone.
Well, and they don't. I think you're absolutely right, Abraham, because if you look at it, they don't have mistakes. Like they'll have people. And maybe this is part of the reason, like they have this huge following. We're talking about, the show that shall not be named, but the Critical Role has a huge following, and I think it's for what it is, for entertainment, they do a great job. But the fact that they don't have players that make mistakes, like what? That's not a real table. A real table, people make mistakes. I make mistakes. Players make mistakes. We misremember things. It happens. It's just
that's why I have my games posted. Is because it's not just for whoever to watch and kind of comprehend what we're doing. It's for me as well.
Yeah.
So I can go back and look at it and go, what can I do that would be better? What can I do to cut back the waste of time here? How can I manage my time better in the game session next by learning from the things that I have done in this session? And for me, it's always good to have that record showing improvement as the sessions keep on going, and just being able to say, hey, this used to be me way back when. Now look at our group. Now we're doing things a little bit more refined, a little bit better, and soon enough things get even better. We become more fluent in what we're doing and understanding in the context of the rules that we've set for ourselves. So
yeah. And so you'd suggested that to me, Rick. We said, why don't you record? Because I was saying that pacing was always a big thing for me. Like, so you said, well, you should just record a session, just the audio even, and listen to it. Listen to the pauses, listen to everything. And that was very valuable advice. That helps a lot, to just listen to yourself, listen to the practice. What I found is that I could hear the words that I would repeat too often, and it just drove me nuts. And so now I'm part of my RPG crusade is to have a tighter description. Abraham, I admire you for this. If you listen to Abraham when he's giving descriptions, he does not use equivocating language. He does not say kinda ever.
Yes.
And that might be an advantage, Abraham, as a language, like English as a second language. I find being someone who speaks more than one language also, when I'm speaking in the other language, I'm much better at using the right words without filler words. When I'm in my mother tongue, oh boy. Oh,
I didn't even think about the gonna thing until you mentioned it the other day, because Southerners, gonna isn't a word.
It's not a word.
It's dead space. It's just, I'm gonna go to the store. It's not. We don't even say the G. We leave about half of the letters.
Well, Rick and I have that, like up in where we are. Like there's words that us Canadians use.
Oh yeah.
All the time.
I sometimes have to catch myself because I normally run games in Espanol. So when I am about to say something and I think, what are you doing? Cabrón, don't say that.
You're switching between languages.
Yeah, I noticed that Abraham has he pauses, he kind of clears his mind, and then he says directly what he's going to say as the narrator. And that's something that I must start doing as well. Kind of pause and then say the thing that I need to say. That's something I got to work on myself. So,
Yeah, I do too. It's a work in progress, and I think maybe. What do you think about this, guys? If our message isn't so much that what we're trying to do is out of the reach of everyone, I think the message is that we want more people to try it. Just add it to your game. Don't take anything away. Don't take anything away. Just add it to your game and see what happens.
I said
It's
I would
so
give an
good.
example. I said I would give an example recently that happened at my table because I still have some players that are, they're in the Mother May I mindset because they come from non-role-playing tables before they got to mine. And I'm not standing on some pedestal. I played Pathfinder for 10 years and role played for maybe 4 of them.
Right. Yeah, I'm brand new at it too.
Yeah, exactly. But brilliant solution. They don't take it as personal attacks whenever. So the specific example, there's a meteor falling on their town. They're trying to stop it, and they're trying to stay very hush-hush about it because it's got rare and precious metals that they would like to collect and not have a bunch of treasure hunters swarming the town all of a sudden. And the character looks up at the sky, and the player asks me, does it look like it's getting bigger?
Oh, yeah, okay.
And so I say, there's a random peasant walking by. Does what look like it's getting bigger? And he goes, nothing, carry on. I look at the sky. Immediate. That was the only question we had the whole session. And it's brilliant. It's that easy. It's you just ramp it into the fiction, and then it creates this, it creates this kind of humorous moment where you've got this like horrified peasant that's like walking home, like wonder, what did he mean? What did he mean?
What Rick, have you ever had a situation, or Abraham, or Tyler, where you've found that there's you have a player that's just unwilling to learn the system? What do you do in those situations?
You mean the mechanics?
I'm talking about the mechanics. Like they're just unwilling to.
I don't know if you've seen my my horror RPG video. I had a player that was playing a kineticist in Pathfinder. If you know anything about kineticist, the kineticist is pretty easy to play, but it is poorly written. It's kind of nightmarishly organized. They're only level 3 though. They don't have that much. Basically, what you do is you blast with your element, which is you make a ranged attack. Yeah. It's just like you're shooting a bow, but the stats you use are slightly different. It's pre-written down on the character sheet, everything you need to know how to roll. You roll a d20, you add this number, you're trying to hit AC. That's it. That's all you need to know. Every combat, this player needed to be reminded how to use their class's core mechanic. And part of it was their fault, obviously. And part of it was I was playing in the on-campus student union, and we would have randos who were not in the game wandering by, and they would come by just to watch. And most of them, 90% of them, they would be silent and they would just watch. And no problem. I have no problem with that. We're playing in a public setting. That's more than you're right. I don't know if it was, I don't think it was his girlfriend, but it might have been someone just flirting with him that would constantly come by, and she would be on her phone all the time and be like showing him memes all the time. And I'm like, okay, you're not in the group. Can you please, show them these after the game, show them before the game, and he wasn't telling her to leave. So it was like, eventually what I did there, because there wasn't in particular, I think there was like 1 out of 4 people there that was actually a role player. So that one was, I didn't kick anyone out. I just stopped running the game. But
Tyler, I believed your story right up to the point where there was a girl that came up and flirted with a role player, and I'm sorry, at that point I was like, this is fiction. It's fiction.
Hey, look, I met my fiance in a game through role playing. I met my fiance through role playing.
No, I'm just teasing you. I know they exist. They just don't exist here.
The fact that I've met 2, that's what you should disbelieve.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Anything there, Abraham?
What do you think? Sorry, Abraham. Yeah. Sorry, I'm stepping all over your toes, Rick. Where's the mute on this?
Yeah, about what Crispy said, I think that's pretty clear. What Tyler and Crispy said, it's just about actually role playing. If you have no interest in role playing, or you have no interest in the rule system, well, what are you doing here? Why
Right.
Why are you even playing tabletop role-playing games if you are not role-playing, right?
I mean,
But
I want the players to have the basics down. You know, when it is time to roll. What you know, when it, like they don't roll ahead of you, that sort of thing. It's just the basic etiquette.
Mhm.
As far as like knowing the spells and stuff like that. And sometimes it takes time for that sort of thing for the player, because the player's not always wandering around with a sheet reading it every day kind of idea. It's gonna and they're only playing once a week or something like that, so they may not have access to their character sheet. Sometimes, like at my table, I always have the character sheets at the game masters table so that the players don't lose them. So
I also think it's important that people understand that role-playing is extremely easy. It is extremely easy. If I were to teach someone right now how to role-play, I'm going to present the situation. You describe what you are doing or what your character is doing. If you are more comfortable in third person, go ahead and say Bobby is doing this, Bobby is doing this, Bobby is doing that, and I will tell you what to roll, and then something happens. That's it. That's as
Yep.
simple as that. And also make up your mind about roleplay. Approach roleplay as if it were the first time that you have roleplayed in your life. I don't care if you have roleplayed 30 years or since you were inside of your mother's womb or whatever. Roleplay has been taught horribly, tremendously wrong, because like I said, these are businessmen that just want you to buy their stuff. They don't care what you do with their books. They just want you to buy. That's why you have like who knows how many hundred pseudo clones of Dungeons and Dragons. They just want to present the new idea. Oh, this is better. This is even better. This is old school but newer. This is older school but newer. Make up your mind about that. It's also important to keep in mind that there are actually a couple of people present in the comments, I think, unless I am mistaken, that still fall into these errors. Role playing is not acting.
Are there people actually watching?
In movies, in theater plays?
amazing.
Listen, this is very important. Actors do not describe their actions. This is not drama
True.
class.
That's correct.
Actors do not describe their actions.
They
act.
just do them. Yeah,
They
act.
just act. Okay, so roleplay is describing your character's actions. So for any poopy head that is watching this, you cannot trick people anymore with that. You do that, and you're going to get into serious trouble. Dun, dun, dun. Okay.
They're gonna get the talking by the El Aguilar.
You're going to get Dark Schneider. if you got the reference, you're so cool.
Well,
Have you ever had that, Abraham, or not Abraham? Sorry, Rick. Like where someone just refused to learn. Like you play Traveler a lot. Have you ever had someone who's like they just could never figure out, or they just refuse to invest the time to learn?
I tend to go with simpler systems all the time, so I don't have the issue of the players, constructing their characters with all these little things like 5e does. All these little extra. You get a bonus for this, bonus for that. You combine it with this, and you get this kind of a bonus. And I stay away from those kind of systems. I want something really simple, easy, uses the same role mechanic as much as possible. Like Traveler, you're only using 2 6-sided dice, and that's all you use. You don't have to go for another dice for this, another dice for that. The Castles and Crusades, it's all mostly D20, and there isn't all these little tack on little bonuses that you get that you would see in 5e. It's a little bit more streamlined than that.
Let's say I'm a Traveler virgin. Okay, like I bought the book recently. I've never played it. I haven't read out the whole book yet. And let's just say character creation. I looked at the character creation. You go through this kind of cycle. How many times you go through the cycle is how old your character is at the beginning.
Right.
If you had a situation where a character or a player they just didn't want to learn that, like have you ever had that, or no?
No.
Okay.
They're usually invested in their characters when they're rolling them up, kind of learning what they're doing, because you have to think in the context of your Traveler character. growing up and going through these different career paths, and you're
right,
like,
the career thing. Yeah.
yeah. For them, it's kind of like a random adventure in
So like a
Traveler.
mini game kind of thing.
Yeah, a mini game in itself before the actual game. So,
Because I guess I asked the question because I thought, that's maybe another red line for me is if I had a player that just refused. Like, so Abraham gave a perfect example of what we're looking for. It should be simple enough. I just tell you, make this check. Like Abraham in the video game one that you ran, they would say roll dash or roll this or roll that, and then the players knew what to do. They just rolled it. But I would suggest that if I had a player at the table that just refused, and so I said roll an attack, and they're like, "What do I do for that again?" And they're like, "Well, we play weekly for 3 hours, and we've been doing this for how many years? And what do you mean you don't know? Like, what do you?" So I suppose that for me would be a reason to gatekeep my group.
Right.
I would say to that player, look, there seems to be a disconnect. Why are you not getting this? Like, is this? Sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
I have a story of this turning out well. Rick, the entire time you were saying that, I was just like, oh, wow, he's describing the opposite of what Pathfinder is. Geez, no, it's not for everyone, though. I had a player who recently, one of my long-term Pathfinder players' girlfriends who wanted to join. And I'm usually a little wary of that because I'm like, do you actually want to play, or do you just want to be here because you're with your boyfriend?
Control your boyfriend.
She actually wants to play. So yippee. But she had the issue, which is my fault. I didn't explain this. I did not explain the pitfalls of playing your character sheet and not your character. She's playing a monk, and she's joined into this Pathfinder campaign at a very high level. So she looks at her character sheet and is like, what the hell am I looking at? So we get into combat, and it rolls around to her turn. Everybody else just knows what to do because they've played their characters since, level, 10 at least. But she gets to her character sheet, and she's like, so I have a normal attack, I have flurry of blows, I have stunning fist, which I can do anytime in place of any of these attacks. I can triple my and it's like, okay, what should I do? And I'm like, okay, forget the character sheet. You don't see the character sheet. You see a person in front of you. What do you want to do to him? Oh, I want to punch him a lot. I want to, I'm going to throw a bunch. Okay,
right.
Roll flurry of blows.
I will instead of what do you do to them? Because she's going to get into the I'm gonna,
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean,
but as a first step, as a first step, I think that's a good first step, and then the next level is, as Abraham saying, don't learn bad.
I would go
habits.
from the start from that. Don't go
yeah,
back.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you do? What do you do to them? What do you do? I punch them.
I was explaining to her after the session. Just be thinking about, what you would want to do to this character if you were this person, because you're supposed to be pretending you're this person. So.
See, I had a situation. I had kind of the opposite situation. I had a situation for a few years where I had a player that was bringing his significant other, and he was really into it, and then she was there, I think, more because this was their date night, which, can you imagine? Like, that's a terrible date night. Your date night is with me. Can you imagine? At any rate, they would come, and then when it was her turn, she would just turn to her husband, and then the husband would more often than not just would take over. And there was never enough. And I felt bad because it was clear that she was doing this to humor him, and it may have been kind of something that they felt was required for their relationship. But it was really hard in the game group to make it work, because you had this one person, and whenever it came back to them, they were, for the most part, just totally not invested in the game at all, and not really interested in learning the various mechanics. They just not to the point of system mastery, just to the basic comprehension thing. Like, I'm not talking about someone that understands the infinite damage loop exploit, whatever, how
did you resolve that? How did you resolve that? Did you
I
have
didn't- I wish I could say I had a resolution for that, but eventually what happened is that they when the pandemic well, we can argue whether or not it was an actual pandemic or
okay.
whatever. I don't want to get your channel
No.
strike, whatever, Rick. But when that happened, there we shut down for a time. Sadly, I shouldn't have. I should have just gone underground, whatever. But anyway, we shut down for a time. And then when I started back up, they just took themselves out of the group. They're like, no, we're not comfortable. And so that kind of resolved itself, unfortunately, but I labored over it because I'm like, what am I going to do? Do I have to sit down with this like marriage counseling? This is obviously something your wife is not getting into. Like, and you're dragging her out, and then you get upset when she doesn't do what you think she should do. This is not working. Like, why? It's awkward for the rest of us. We're just going to sit here. Anyway. So I think that would be a red line for me. Like, if you're not invested enough to know the mechanics of the game, whatever the game is, rules light or Pathfinder or whatever it is, you gotta at least know the basic mechanics.
Yes.
Or you're not, I don't see how you can do it.
Yeah.
Okay, if I understand it correctly, he was a guy that was dragging his wife to the games.
Yeah, I don't know that he was dragging. I think it was probably one of those things that, hey, we're going to do this together, right? And this is something that we both say we enjoy, but I think she was more humoring him than. And then because she didn't have the same level of investment, she kind of just looked at him all the time, and then he'd have to like.
I think it's more of his problem, because I'm not going to be dragging my girlfriend to whatever she doesn't enjoy.
No, exactly. But it just was an awkward situation because it was that one player that you knew just didn't really follow along, and she's just kind of sitting there doodling on her page the whole time. And anyway, does anyone else have that, or is it just me? About you've had situations where you had like a player that just wasn't invested, and you're like, what? Why are they still here?
Yeah, we've had that. We've had that. Oh, sorry, but we've had that in. Game sessions back in the 80s with my game master Ted, who is actually one of the better game masters out there, that told us, hey, you're all in character, no out of character talk. And we had the girlfriend that showed up, and with it was Ted's nephew, and it was his nephew's girlfriend that was always showing up. And it kind of got a little weird at times, but our sessions weren't they were more like what was it called, where they have the continuing players rolling in and rolling out during the campaign. So it wasn't like they showed up all the time. They ended up showing up for a few sessions, and then they would go off and do their own kind of thing, and we'd continue on with our main characters, continuing on with the adventure. So it wasn't so bothersome. But anybody else have any weird experiences like that? No?
Not specifically with relationships, but I did have two players when I was running. They're at the start of my long-running Pathfinder campaign that aren't here anymore. And they're good friends of mine. But they can roleplay when they want to, but they just don't interact very often. Like in a weird way, where even when they're when they're under a strenuous situation where it's like, okay, gun pointed to your head, what do you do? They're just kind of like, I could use the spell, or I could attack, and it's like, and then they're on their phone for
I have no patience for that, Tyler. Like, that's one of those things. If it's an artifact perhaps of me spending as much time and thinking about the game so much. If I'm going around and it's your turn and you're again, I don't know.
You know what the good thing about this was, though? The other players didn't have patience for it.
Yeah,
so they would in character be going, "What are you doing? Come on, you've got to shoot.
Come
that
on,
thing.
save
Go,
him! Like, move.
And they would drag them into it, right? And then eventually, I implemented a thing of like, right, okay, Pathfinder, we should represent in the fiction that you are allowed, that people in combat make mistakes. You don't have time to think of always what is the best thing to do in your situation. So I'm going to put a turn timer, right? Is everybody okay with that? And everybody was like, yeah, we're okay with that. And I was like, okay, so that's going to encourage you to not be on your phones anymore. And for one of them, it just didn't. They were just okay with getting their turn skipped sometimes, and I was like, okay,
Okay.
to each their own, I suppose.
Yeah, well, that one
this
can
is-
die first, and
this-
that's okay.
Yeah, I was like,
The-
they're kind of
Like
a
Abraham
dicky-
would, I think
Yeah.
Abraham handles this excellently, and I've borrowed how Abraham works on it. If someone's just kind of then that's what their character does,
exactly,
and then it's
yeah,
on to
they
the
were-
next person, and it's just that works
Yeah.
well.
And what was weird about it is they played their character that way. They were eventually they died and they got resurrected, and then they were like, maybe this adventuring life's not for me. And so I was like, huh.
Good.
I should
Then
talk to
retire
them
that
at some-
character, get a different one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I should talk to them at some point and be like, were you like really role playing in like a 5th dimension level, and I just didn't get it?
4G, what is that? 4D chess. That's what it was.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I
but
just
yeah, so it was,
remembered.
you know,
Oh,
Oh,
are you
sorry,
finished,
you-
Tyler? I think I
yeah, I was
interrupted
just gonna
you.
say it's strange. Yeah.
I was just thinking perhaps of the most complex roleplay situation that I encountered related somewhat to relationships, not exactly, but I had a mixed group. It was going to be a short campaign, Pathfinder first edition short campaign. And there were these couple of sisters. One of them was a doctor, but that doctor, she had a crush on one of the male players. So she was an amazing role player. I can tell you right now, perfect role player, perfect. But for whatever reason, because she wanted to draw the attention or catch the attention of senpai over there, she constantly took the miniatures and was constantly shifting them of position. In Pathfinder, you need to keep the minis in place to understand the area of effect, blah, blah, blah. And she kept doing that, disrupting the game. And so I didn't want to disrupt or shatter the immersion. I just placed them back into place. And I constantly told her after the game, don't move the minis because it's very difficult for me to keep track of all the things. And she kept on doing it, but I tolerated all of that because she was role-playing so well.
Mm.
So
That's a good point, Abraham. Like, there's a lot of things that I'll tolerate now that there is one thing that I'm struggling with, and this is, I'm looking for a resolution on this because I don't want to lose any players. But I've one thing that's a big red line for me, a big red flag, I guess, is when we're role playing and players get angry when the world doesn't conform to the way they want it to be. Have you ever seen that? Like where well, that's stupid. I want the world to be this way, right? Like that. No, like that seems to be a real I mentioned it in passing in a video a long time ago, that I noticed that I have a character who gets visibly frustrated when the world doesn't behave the way he wants it to behave. And that, I think, is a bit of a deal breaker. Sorry, Tyler.
Yeah.
I used to be that player.
Yeah.
Specifically because in fantasy games, yes, it's not exactly real sword fighting. Not all the time. You've got magic swords, you've got spells that are hitting you. But when I have a game master and I would have this happen, for example, I thrust with my greatsword. Oh, a greatsword does not have piercing, so you can't thrust with a greatsword. Then I'll totally break it, go off on a tangent. I'll be like, what are you talking about? Of course, and I'll be pulling up, the documents of like, of course a greatsword can thrust, and I'm ruining it for everyone else. I realize that now, but when I was in high school, I was thinking, no, this isn't my immersion is being ruined. Nobody else's immersion was being ruined by that, though. But not saying that's a good game master practice to just say, no, you can't do that. But
that sounds a bit different from what Crispy was saying, because Crispy said more like the world was changing, but I think he wanted the world to adapt to him. To his whims.
But I wasn't happy with the way that the game master was running things, and instead of just eventually going, okay, we don't see eye to eye on how the physics in the world in this case should behave.
Right.
I should go to a different table, or I should talk to you after the session.
Yeah.
I was ruining it in the game.
So my issue, I understand, and I totally can relate to that, Tyler. It wasn't so much a situation where it was a question of whether or not that particular flask of whatever will burn on water or not, or is it heavier? It wasn't a physics related thing. It wasn't a physical world thing. What it was is you could see the player was upset because I was having the rest of the populace of the world react to his character's actions in what I felt was a believable way. and that was annoying to him. So it's a bit of a Mexican, no offense, Mexican standoff situation. That's an expression. It's
I
not meant
actually
to be a
like that
slur.
term, the Mexican
You do?
standoff.
Okay,
It's
there we
really
go.
cool.
Good. So it was a tense situation, guns drawn, everyone's kind of, and then one of the characters just out of the blue is like, well, I'm just going to pull a gun and shoot at this other guy. And I'm like, well, there's all these other people that have guns on you. Like, this is a tight, you're just going to die right now because you've done something that if the world is RPG is dumb is a great comment on this. I think I'm supposed to call him Mercer Core or something now, but
No, he changed back to RPGs, dumb.
oh, he did. Okay,
Mhm.
good, because that's how I remember him. I'm guilty of changing names, so anyway, he says like, your world has to be believable, and that was what I was going for in the situation as I described it. I'm envisioning this. You draw steel, like you're going to draw your irons and just shoot when you have hostiles all around you. They're hostile. It is a standoff situation. And then I describe what happens next, and I could see he was just upset because he was like, well, I can do what I have ultimate agency over my character. And I am not going to stop him from what he's doing, but I will enforce what I think would be a reasonable reaction to the player's actions in the world. Does that make sense? But
now I understand. Yes.
That's what I'm struggling with. Is that how do you get players to accept the fact that while they can do whatever they choose to do, like you try to cast charm on the queen in her chamber where she has guards. Okay, you wake up and you have no teeth left. Like we're not rolling anything because you don't in the world, that's just not believable in the world.
Now that I understand, I have actually run into this exact thing. I know Abraham, you wanted to say something, so I'll keep it short. I've run into this exact thing where my my players in my Pathfinder campaign, they decided they wanted to take on, Cheliax, the big, devil summoning slaver, big bad nation. And they were like, we're just going to take it to the top. We're just going to kill we're just going to kill the queen. It's like, okay, even if you succeed, which they did you plan for the fallout of that? Did you plan for all of the loyalists that are now going to be hunting you down constantly? And they had this thing where they were like, out of the game, they told me, hey, Tyler, this is like, I know what we're doing is dark, but this feels like a slog. It feels like we're being punished for not our characters, but it feels like we, the players, are being punished for this. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. That was not my intention at all. I'm just trying to make sure the world responds organically to you guys. You're biting off more than you can chew. The characters are biting off more than you can chew. So understand that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. You are not condemned to necessarily die because you've taken a really hard path, but the path of the vigilante at this scale is not an easy one. And that's what I'm trying to evoke here. Does everyone understand that? And they went, okay, yeah, as long as it feels like we're fighting towards that light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not just going to be this, small victories followed by major defeats forever for the rest of the campaign. Okay, we trust you. So it was just being clear with what the expectations were going forward, that I'm not just here to, kick them in the face and, abuse my players. I do want to see them succeed, but I'm not going to give them success for free. And after talking about that, they were fine with it.
What Crispy mentioned is you have agency over your character, but outside of your character, the world, the other player, they have their agendas. They have it's alive out there. The world
exactly.
Yep.
And I need the players to understand that. Like I need them and not see that as a personal attack. Like sorry, can I share one quick story? I promise. I'm so sorry, Rick. You'll never invite me again. I know. But I had a player that wanted to test whether or not the other people in the caravan were evil by casting some spell. It was 5th edition. It was some kind of spell that if the character was evil, then it would do some damage. The problem is I had it work, but I had it work so that the person was immolated. Now, all the rest of the people just see this guy cast someone who's done nothing. He's just in the caravan and he just lights on fire. So obviously there's going to be an inquiry into this. There was going to be a trial, and he was like, I thought the player handled it reasonably well, but the idea was, you killed someone. Well, what was his crime? Well, I don't know. He was evil. But yeah, he could be evil if he doesn't act on it. If he's not, like, you didn't see him actually, what was the crime? And he had a widow now, and because evil guys still have families often. And he was just a peasant, so it's not like he had any hit points. And so I that's what those kind of scenarios is what I'm talking about, where players will have that happen, and then they'll take it as this, why are you doing this? You're punishing me. I'm like, no, it's the world that's punishing you. And not you as a player, just the characters and the characters' actions.
Yeah, because how many people out there have detect evil? Did you tell anyone else you were doing this, or
no? He just
go,
pointed at the guy, and the guy lit on fire and died. And everyone else is like, "What did you just murdered that guy for? What? Oh no! Listen, he was evil because I'm this." I'm like, but we have no evidence of that. What's the evidence?
Like a crazy person.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
If I just pulled this and started stabbing somebody on the streets, now so
I made the player character had to provide for the widow and her children for the rest of until the children were age of majority. And I made like that was the sentence of this, and I could tell he was kind of upset about it, but I kind of felt like, well, otherwise you just go around. Why? No, there would be no evil peasants anywhere because you just have a bunch of clerics going around. Well, I'm just whatever. I can't remember what the name of the spell was. It doesn't matter. Basically, just a minor amount of damage if the person was evil or something.
Little aside, that is a great example of a way to make high fantasy settings make sense. Don't give your fantasy superheroes, which is effectively what paladins, clerics, and wizards are. Don't just give them free reign to do whatever.
No, that's right.
Not what the stream is about, but
no.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't. Yeah, that's right. Sorry, Rick. I interrupted. No, that was supposed to be short. And holy smokes, if that's short, what is long?
It's interesting to think in that context. There was a recent video I seen on Baldur's Gate 3 being too hard. I'm sure you may have seen it as well. Somebody was expressing that there is actual reactions to the things that you do, and the players are saying, well, our game master doesn't do these
because your game master sucks.
Reveals that things are happening, and they lose the context through playing that way for so long that when they do play Baldur's Gate and they realize there is consequences for their reactions, they're like, oh my god, what's going on? This game is not this hard.
It's on hard mode, and you think if they can code that into a game, then what's our problem? Why can't we? Like we certainly should be able to do it better than a computer can do. Like if a computer can say, well, this action leads to this consequence, then a living, breathing person with at least as much IQ as teeth should be able to figure out what it is that a reasonable action or consequence would be for the character's actions. And then, but I guess that's comes back to my original struggle, which is how do you work with a player that's resisting that? Like they resent the fact that their actions have direct and in some cases immediate and severe consequences in the world.
You just have to reflect on real life. If you did something like this in real life, you're kind of reflecting on real life as well. So on your lessons of life.
Another fallacy related to roleplay. Roleplaying is not storytelling. You are not telling a story. Oh, I go and kill this peasant. Nothing happens to me. Everyone gives me gold. The end. No, you take action and see what happens. Just like in real life, you do something, see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
You need to explain to the players that it's not a video game where you can't just I think people are conditioned by video games like Skyrim or whatever, where they go around, they kill all the all the civilians and killing someone. Oh, I pay 1,000 gold, haha, and I lose a couple of skills, and it's like, no, they're going to kill you.
Yeah, no, I like
people
blood
would cut off
vendettas. Yeah,
you
I
know,
like,
people would
yeah.
cut off your hands for stealing not
Mhm.
that long ago. In
Mhm.
many modern countries, that's the punishment for stealing. You think
Mhm.
they're just going to give you a fine? And also the other part of video games,
Fine
of
just
course, you
means
know,
legal at a cost. That's all that means.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
The other thing, you know, that video games sort of ingrained is, oh, I'm, you know, one, I'm alone. Two, I'm just gonna hit the quick save button and reload if bad consequences. So
Mhm.
it leads to people going, you know, they start playing the game too much instead of the character, and they're like, I wonder if I can wiggle my way into this corner and like pickpocket this dude, and then you know, obviously they're not really thinking that, but that sort of mindset that's ingrained by video games is like, if I fail, whatever, you know, there's no consequences for it. And yeah, it's you just have to explain to your players, you know, right, we're not in the real world. Maybe you are, but you know, if you're not, we're not in the real world, but we're going to follow the logic of the world that we're playing.
Have
Right?
you seen, Tyler, have you seen the awful mechanic from the Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, the push mechanic? No?
I'm not sure.
You basically attempt something. I'm going to pickpocket that guy. Oh, you failed your roll. I'm going to push my roll, and then the game master needs to tell you the consequence. Okay, but
Yeah.
if you push your roll behind the door number 1, if you push your roll, if you succeed, you get this money. But if you fail, the consequences will be jail.
Oh no, I don't want to
great.
do that. Yeah. Yes, I'm aware of that one. Yeah, I forgot what it was called.
So let's do a little bit of a conclusion here.
Yeah, sorry,
and,
Rick.
And we'll say, all right. So when do you actually give up on that non-role player at the table? When do you? Crispy, go for it.
I coming full circle, I would say I give up when the player gives up. So if the player themselves has thrown in the towel, they're not willing to bring everything they can reasonably bring to the game and have a fun time with the rest of us in the game, then it's time to say goodbye.
Okay. Tyler?
If they're just generally a bad human being, you can't see my hand. But number one is if they're just generally a bad human being, you know, if they come to your house and, you know, everyone brings snacks, but they don't bring snacks and they just mooch off of everyone and they're generally annoying to be around. Well, obviously you don't want them at your table. Two, if they can't accept criticism, if they are caught, everyone makes mistakes. We're only human. But if when you point out these mistakes, they go, no, that's just my style. Oh, no, that's not how my old GM did it. You know, instead of going, oh, I'll try it your way.
Okay. Abraham?
I think that roleplay is what it's all about. I really loved what Crispy said, that when they give up on themselves, but I have roleplayed with people that I wouldn't get along with otherwise. We would clash on so many points, on so many.
Oh, same.
So many. But we are all in love with roleplay. And some people do not understand this. Once you create that immersion through roleplay, you are infatuated, you are there, you are living the experience. Even as a game master, you suddenly embody the non-player characters. Sometimes I feel like I'm the world itself. It's very weird. You have to experience it through roleplay. So you could have as many differences as you want with me, but as long as you show up to my table to roleplay, and then we don't want to see each other's face again. It was great, man. Okay. So long, but I will have that
Completely
player
agree.
at my table as long as they roleplay. I will have them. Yeah.
I'm more on the inclination of you know, along with Crispy as well. If they give up, you know, it's pretty much a wash from there on. I do have, you know, I do want my players to learn and grow and become, you know, good role players. Sometimes it's a tough road to lead them through because they don't understand. You try to give them guidance, you know, as much as you possibly can. And to me, if I'm not giving them enough guidance, if I'm not doing a one-on-one in order to help them improve, you know, it's me that I feel like I'm the one who's failed in the end. But that's how I feel. That's the way I'm, you know, that's the way I'm geared, I guess. So. But that was a really awesome discussion. I've got I have supper going on in the background here, and
Sorry, Rick.
family up.
Please give my apologies to your wife. And
It's all good. It was a very good talk and very interesting, perspective between all of us, in the game master area as well as players, in our experiences. And hopefully it's a lot of stuff that people can watch and maybe question themselves, when is that time when you're just like, oh, or is it the player that's going to go, oh, I'm out of here, but I really thank you guys, everybody. Visit everybody's channel. I'm going to link to all the channels down below and have all that information for everyone there. Thank you, Abraham. Thank you, Crispy. Thank you, Tyler. You guys have been awesome. I don't care if you talk too much. It's good.
oh, way too much.
I like you guys talking.
Thanks
So
for having
anyways,
us.
yes,
Yes.
no problem. And you guys out there, the rigmarole.
Hey, since you made it this far in the video at the end, you may as well hit that subscribe button. Because it's free. Honest, it's free. Just go ahead and hit it. I'm learning stuff. You're learning stuff. We all learn together. Subscribe. Just do it.